All right, section 2.1. This is chapter 2, conditional statements. So a conditional statement is a logical statement with two parts. One is the hypothesis, which we'll call P, and the other one is the conclusion, which we'll call Q. When a conditional statement is written in if-then form, the if part, that doesn't include the word if, it's what's after if, the if part contains the hypothesis and the then part contains the conclusion. So a lot of times we'll say if P, then Q. All right. And when we talk about it symbolically, you'll see it as P arrow Q. And this arrow right here means implies. So P implies Q. So example number 1, use H to identify the hypothesis and C to identify the conclusion. Then rewrite the conditional statement in if-then form. So A says X is greater than 5 if X is greater than 3. So on this one here, the hypothesis, again, remember I just told you the hypothesis follows the word if. So on that one there, you would have X is greater than 3. Your conclusion will be X is greater than 5. And then to write it in if-then form, you would say if X is greater than 3, then X is greater than 5. Right now we're just learning to write if-then statements. We'll talk about more about the truthfulness or the falsehood of them as we go on. All right. The second one here says, all members of the soccer team have practice today. So the hypothesis states a person and I should have left more room, I apologize. A person is a member of the soccer team. The conclusion would be a person has practice today. So then we would say in if-then form, if a person is a member of the soccer team, then they have practice today. So I had to go a little past there, but it's okay. Let's see, the negation. So the negation of a statement is the opposite of this original statement, and that one we call as not P. So again, symbolically, we would use a squiggle, P. So the squiggle is telling you not P. All right. So let's see. Example 2, write the negation of each statement. the car is white. Well, again, the squiggle means not, so let's go ahead and put the car is not white. And let's see, it is not snowing. Well, what's the opposite of it's not snowing? It is snowing. Okay, so now consider the conditional statement if P, then Q. To write the converse, exchange the hypothesis and the conclusion. So again, we're going to switch the hypothesis and the conclusions. We're going to say if Q, then P. All right, or symbolically, we would say Q implies P. To write the inverse, negate the hypothesis and the conclusion. So on that one there, you would say if, not P, then not Q. And again, symbolically, we would say not P implies not Q. And then finally, so look at these words we're looking at here. We have the converse, we have the inverse, and now we're going to look at the contrapositive. So we have three different new definitions here. So to write the contrapositive, first write the converse, then negate the hypothesis and the conclusion. So what it's saying here is we're just going to take and we're going to write the converse. So the converse says if Q then P, and we're going to put the word not before both of them. So if not Q, then not P. And again, by symbols, we would say not Q implies not P. So if you think about it, it's still kind of the opposite of the inverse if you want to think of it that way also. All right, so example 3. And again, it says, let P be you are in New York City. All right, and we're just going to go ahead and say NYC here because it'll be easier for us to write. And let Q be you are in the United States. So let's just say US. Write each statement in words and decide whether it is true or false. Okay? So the conditional statement, we're going to write that one first. So let's say it's, again, P implies Q. So think of it that way. And we would say if you are in New York City, then you are in the US. All right. Do you think that's a true statement? Well, of course, that one's true. Okay, the converse is again Q implies P. So then we could say if you are in the United States, then you are in New York City. All right, and think about that one. Is that one true or is that one false, people? And hopefully you'll say it's false. And again, sometimes I'll ask you it's for like an example. All right, and we'll talk about that probably later. Okay, but again, you could say if you're in the US, then you are in New York City. That's false because you could be in Seattle. All right. So the inverse is again, we take our conditional statement and we're just going to put not in front of it. So not P implies not Q. And let me make that one look a little better. All right, so that will say if you are not in New York City, then you are not in the United States. And again, that one should also be false. Okay, and again, you could come up with an example. If you're not in New York City, well, you could be in St. Louis. And then you are not in the US. Well, yeah, you are in the US, right? So that's why that one could be false. You could say that. All right. So, and then finally, the contrapositive would be not Q implies not P. And again, you can think of it as taking the converse and negating it or flipping the inverse, if you want to think of it that way, which will then state you are not. If you are not in the US, then you are not in New York City. And that one should also make sense. That should be true. Because again, you could be in Canada, well, you're not in New York City. You could be in France, you're not in New York City. All right. So, what this is telling us, and this is the final thing we're going to talk about today. We'll finish some more of this tomorrow. Like I said, we'll talk more about it. So, a conditional statement. So, that's the one we start with. So, the conditional statement and its contrapositive are either both true or both false. Okay, that's going to be important. They're both true or both false. Similarly, the converse and the inverse. So the converse and the inverse are either both true or both false. So those go together, people, and that's the key. The conditional statement and the contrapositive go together. They're both true or they're both false. And the converse and the inverse go together, and they're either both true or both false. And that's why they are called equivalent statements. And we will talk some more about those tomorrow. All right. Thank you.